Check out today's work of OtakuDaiKun fan art. Oh, we've got Dai-chan holding a chibi Daikun. I love it. It's a really interesting art style. Thank you for the art, Blendware. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. Let's be real. Animation isn't easy, especially when it's hand-drawn. Given the poor working conditions of certain anime studios in Japan, it's no wonder we have series that greatly vary in quality. As fans, we're kinda used to it. We'll watch a rougher anime if it's hilarious or has a compelling narrative. On the other hand, there are anime that we love primarily because they're so beautiful. Then, of course, we have anime that continue on with a new studio and experience a severe drop in quality between seasons. Perhaps most perplexing, however, are anime that look absolutely gorgeous at times, and at others quite ghastly. On TV tropes, it's referred to as off-model. This is most common during the 80s and 90s. For just an episode or two, an anime's production will be handled by a different director, team, or lead artist, and almost make it seem like you're watching a completely different show. Typically, this occurs when said anime are held to a strict deadline for television broadcast, and corners get cut because the show must go on. This is why OVA tend to look so much better than their serialized counterparts. The result? Some of our most beloved classic anime have blemishes that we either lovingly accept or pretend not to notice. Not today, however, as we'll be looking at some hand-picked examples and, if possible, learning about how things went so wrong. As a disclaimer, I'm not saying any of these anime are bad. Some of them are my all-time favorites, but it's nonetheless interesting to confront and understand these blemishes, perhaps to determine if they should be considered blemishes at all. Without further ado, let's dive in. Oddly enough, when I went searching through off-model examples from Neon Genesis Evangelion, nobody had listed the rather glaring shift in art style featured in episode 10. This episode, titled Magma Driver, has Asuka submerged in an active volcano to retrieve the embryo of Sandalphon, the 8th angel. Despite this episode treating us to Asuka in a bikini, lecturing Shinji on the principles of thermal expansion, I admittedly don't like this episode because a lot of shots depict the characters as, well, squished, I guess. Their heads are rounder, their eyes are smaller, and I personally don't care for it. When compared to pretty much every other episode in the series, I find it almost impossible to ignore, so it's strange that I can't find documentation on it. It was directed by Hideaki Anno like all the other episodes, so I don't know what happened. If you all have juicy details about this episode, let me know. Slayers was one of my favorite anime growing up, and I fondly remember binging all 3 original seasons in less than a week. When you don't take a break between episodes, it's a lot easier to notice sudden shifts in art direction. The episode I want to bring attention to is episode 31, also labeled episode 5 of Slayers Next, the anime's 2nd season. Like many 90s anime, Slayers episodes had a handful of directors that would take charge of certain episodes. But this episode, titled Staying Behind for the Sake of Love, stood out as the only one directed by Kazuya Komai. Funny enough, Komai also served as an animation director for Beck Mongolian Chop Squad, a show I'll be referencing again later in the video. In Slayers, however, I noticed how this episode's characters had much more prominent lips than normal. Along with the more sharp and angular lines, their lips seem particularly pouty, assisted by distinct shading just below the nose. Plot-wise, this is a very interesting episode, but I definitely remember being pulled out of the experience by its uncanny art style. While Komai has directed other shows with totally different styles, I did notice some consistency with regard to poofy, pouty lips. This wouldn't be an OtakuDaiKun list without at least one reference to Fate, so let's get it over with. The 2006 anime by Studio Dean has mixed reception among fans. I for one love it, as it's currently the closest thing we have to an adaptation of the Fate route, but I'd be lying if I said it hasn't aged well. The reason for this is the obvious change in art style that occurs multiple times per episode. There's one main art style by Megumi Ishihara that really does look quite nice. The anime's official art all has this style, as does the opening, but there are plenty of moments that truly lack that Ishihara touch. The most important shots are handled properly, but the more mundane moments are reduced to something more watered down. It's not horrible, but I will say Artoria deserves better. The classic Sailor Moon anime is notorious for its inconsistent visuals. Given that the series has so much filler content, it's no surprise that there'd be at least one other director for those lower-budget episodes. In this case, though, it's so inconsistent that there are only a handful of times 2 consecutive episodes have the same director. There's a myriad of different directors, each one introducing their own art style. I hesitate to call any of these styles ugly per se, but I'd be lying if I said I saw them all equally. One of the most infamous directors is Masahiro Ando, who draws the characters with very vertical eyes. But personally, my least favorite director is Akira Nakamura. Their art makes the anime look like it were an entire decade older. The proportions lack realism, and make Sailor Moon look way more like a kid's cartoon rather than a fully developed series. Among many episodes, you can see their directing in action during episode 35. When I think back to my love of Sailor Moon, I remember the work of Hisashi Kagawa and Ikuko Ito, among others. There's a reason directors of this caliber were put in charge of the most important episodes. I'll go ahead and linger on this panel some more, and hopefully you can tell me in the comments which Usagi you like best. Less forgivable to me are the sometimes horrifying visuals seen in the otherwise spectacular Sorceress Stabber Orphan anime from 1998. There are a couple different looks for Orphan's characters that are rather enjoyable, particularly when the characters have these large oval eyes. There's something elegant about the art style that I very much appreciate. That said, the anime varies in quality quite a bit, and the biggest offender by far is in episode 10, directed by Masakazu Amiya, at least according to IMDb. The episode itself is highly forgettable story-wise. The only reason I remember it at all is for its extremely sloppy animation and atrocious stills. In it, our hero Orphan meets up with his former partner Stephanie, who used to be a man named Stefan. The episode is supposed to invite viewers to understanding Stephanie and her feminine charm as she lets a guy who's crushing on her know the truth of her past. It's a shame that this sort of sensitive topic doesn't get proper development thanks to the poor production values. Understandably, it's also kind of irrelevant, as Stephanie doesn't do much in the story at large, all the while Orphan and his main party fight a strange golem guy with a laser sword. You could probably skip this entire episode and not miss anything worthwhile. A similar goof happens in the anime Magic Knight Rayearth's 17th episode. Admittedly, I've never watched this entire series, but I do acknowledge it as an exceptionally beautiful anime, which makes it all the more tragic that episode 17 goes so off-model from its standard fare. Seriously, most shots of this anime look like they were pulled straight from a manga, with very detailed art and appealing visuals. As such, it came as a shock to see the characters suddenly looking like Cabbage Patch dolls with their faces smashed in with frying pans. This mostly affects the first half of the episode, and compared to other examples I've given, it's really not that bad. Rather, Clamp had just set such a high standard that even a small drop in quality stands out. The same cannot be said for the next anime on this list. Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, is without a doubt one of the best adventure anime one can watch. Loosely based on the Jules Verne novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Nadia takes us across the skies, oceans, and even outer space as we watch Nadia and her lover Jean search the world for clues to Nadia's identity. Most of the time it looks fantastic, especially on Blu-ray. However, the anime does hit a low point in its third quarter, as Nadia and Jean spend way too many filler episodes between two uncharted islands. The art style shifts greatly among these episodes, but by far the worst is episode 27, in which our heroes decide to travel from one island to the other. Suddenly, the art changes from a healthy ancestor to Anno's art in Evangelion to something that looks like strawberry shortcake. It's so bad that when they reintroduced Ayrton, a character from earlier in the series, I couldn't even recognize him. The difference is more night and day than I could ever describe. In my opinion, this is probably the biggest drop in visual quality in an anime, but it's definitely not the most controversial. I feel like that trophy goes to our final entry, Gurren Lagann. Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill are some of the most visually stunning anime to grace the digital age. There's not an episode between them that I would call poorly animated, but ugly? That's a completely different story. Gurren Lagann's 4th episode is notorious for being downright volatile due to its guest director Osamu Kobayashi, the main director behind the previously mentioned Beck Mongolian Chop Squad. There's just something really disturbing about the art style used between these shows. Dopey, comical facial expressions and a lack of detail in proper proportions just make episode 4 come off as extremely lazy, even though it probably wasn't. It's odd, too, since Osamu Kobayashi has worked on many anime, even doing some of the world building for the classic JRPG Grandia, and yet his more uncanny art is more iconic. Apparently, when episode 4 aired in 2007, users on 2channel criticized its animation heavily, and Takami Akai, one of Gainax's co-founders, was so offended by the criticism that he stated reading them was like putting his face next to an anus and breathing deeply. I really hate to say it, but that's kind of what watching the episode felt like personally. Either way, the guy eventually stepped down from the company to apologize for his crude remark. That really sucks. Honestly, I feel like the real issue is that Osamu's art style completely derailed the quality control seen throughout the rest of the series. His style is so distinct that he probably shouldn't have guest directed the episode in such a manner. Whether you like his work or not, I feel it's safe to say that his polarizing style is best left for original works he can handle from start to finish. Now, there are tons of anime that have random off-model moments and shifting directors, but I struggled to pick out ones that took up an entire episode or more. I'm aware that both Naruto and Dragon Ball shift in quality all the time, but considering I hardly ever watch shonen, I had no frame of reference to identify specific episodes to focus on. That, and I feel Dragon Ball Super looks more sloppy and lazy than any of the classic episodes ever were. That's just my opinion, though. And with that, I want to hear yours in the comments below. Be sure to point out any specific moments or episodes from shows you notice have drastically gone off model for the worst. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.